Yes, hang on. Okay, Windows I, right click the start button. Oh, hold on. Right click on start button, settings, display settings. What? Don't even know if that's actually a thing. Hardware accelerated GPU scheduling. Well, it's off. Great. I need a new network card, probably. Periodically drops to kilobytes per 0 kilobytes per second. Can we do a speed test while we're streaming? Is it going to be worth anything? Let's find out. $600 megs down. Well, I'm streaming, so of course it's not going to be high. 2 megabits up. That's nothing. Okay, I guess that's fine. Mm. Okay. Let's see. Guess we can't do links. Hmm. Media state enabled, 1 gigabit per second. Properties. Configure. Hmm. Damn it. Buttons on. Taskbar where window is open. Perfect. There we go. It's better. CPU 6%. System idle. Oh, maybe close some of these tabs. Maybe this is it. How do I have that many edges open? Wait, contact link can go away. Howdy, chat. Hi, chat. But that's not Twitch. We're doing RTMP streaming. RTMP. TCP port 1935 outbound. Outbound rules. Direction. All right. Router. All right, 5 minutes. All right, in the meantime, let's get some news. Let's do some news. Okie dokie. First on our list, Jerome Powell signals Fed is preparing to restart rate cuts, cites downside risks to jobs in Jackson Hole speech. Wall Street rallied on August 22nd as Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell indicated interest rate cuts may be imminent amid rising job market risks. This rally followed a surprisingly weak job growth report this month and Powell's cautious remarks about proceeding carefully with policy changes. Excuse me. Major market indexes climbed, with the S&P rising 1.6% and the Nasdaq increasing 1.9% by late morning Eastern Time. Is this true? Let's see. Okay. Yeah. Cool. Traders placed a 91% probability on a Fed rate cut in September, up from 75% a day earlier, as Treasury yields fell notably on both 10-year and 2-year notes. The market's reaction suggests growing investor optimism for easing monetary policy despite ongoing inflation risks and the Fed's challenging dual mandate. The Federal Reserve Chair opened the door ever so slightly on lowering a key interest rate in the coming months, but gave no hint on the timing of a move. Oh, and there's a video.
This year, the economy has faced new challenges. Significantly higher tariffs across our trading partners are remaking the global trading system. Tighter immigration policy has led to an abrupt slowdown in labor force growth. Over the longer run, changes in tax, spending, and regulatory policies may also have important implications for economic growth and productivity. There is significant uncertainty about where all of these policies will eventually settle and what their lasting effects on the economy will be. In the near term, risks to inflation are tilted to the upside and risks to employment to the downside, a challenging situation. When our goals are in tension like this, our framework calls for us to balance both sides of our dual mandate. Our policy rate is now 100 basis points closer to neutral than it was a year ago, and the stability of the unemployment rate and other labor market measures allows us to proceed carefully as we consider changes to our policy stance. Nonetheless, with policy in restrictive territory, the baseline outlook and the shifting balance of risks may warrant adjusting our policy stance. Monetary policy is not on a preset course. FOMC members will make these decisions based solely on their assessment of the data and its implications.
Can you hear that video? Can you see that video? I wonder if that's like copyright stuff. All right, I don't understand what he's saying. But that's okay. We'll try to log in again. Connection. Hundred megabits per second. That's what we're getting on our Ethernet. Okay. Back to the news. Wall Street heard what it wanted to hear. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, speaking on Friday from the mountain air of Jackson Hole, Wyoming, all but confirmed that the Fed may cut interest rates at its September meeting. Within minutes, Treasury yields fell, the dollar weakened, and the S&P 500 snapped a 5-day losing streak, its longest slide since January. Prices are still running hotter than the Fed's target, Powell said during his keynote speech at the Fed's annual retreat. But the cooling jobs market now looms as an equal concern. Huh. Together, the two forces give the central bank cover to reconsider its long spell of keeping rates higher than they've been in decades. Powell painted a portrait of an economy caught in cross-currents. Inflation has retreated sharply from its post-pandemic peak, but remains above the Fed's 2% target. Meanwhile, job growth has lost momentum. Hiring has slowed to a crawl. The economy added just 73,000 jobs in July, and June's tally was revised down to a scant 14,000, the weakest showing in nearly 5 years, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Even May's figures were slashed by 125,000, leaving a meager gain of only 19,000 jobs. It's a curious kind of balance that results from a marked slowing in both the supply of and demand for workers, Powell said. The cooling labor market reflects both weaker hiring and a slowdown in immigration that had been bolstering the workforce. Tariffs may not have a lasting impact. Add to that a wave of new tariffs, which Powell conceded are pushing consumer prices higher, but in a rare note of optimism, he suggested the damage may not last. Powell acknowledged that tariffs are already filtering into higher consumer prices. Still, he stressed that the impact is unlikely to create a lasting inflation problem. A reasonable base case is that the effects will be relatively short-lived, a one-time shift in price level. That adjustment, however, will not happen overnight. Tariff costs move gradually through supply chains and distribution networks, and because tariff rates continue to change, the process could take longer than expected. Powell's broader point was that while households may face higher prices in the near term, the Fed does not see tariffs fueling a new, sustained cycle of inflation. Wall Street takes the hint. At the time of this reporting, markets wasted no time parsing the nuance. To investors, Powell's remarks cracked the door to easier money and they barged through. The Dow Jones Industrial Average and the Nasdaq both climbed more than 1%. The S&P edged higher, erasing losses that had rattled traders for days. The 10-year Treasury yield slid, a sign investors expect lower rates ahead. Following Powell's comments, the U.S. dollar lost ground, with the dollar index slipping more than 0.7%. It was, in market speak, a relief rally. For weeks, traders had been second-guessing whether the Fed would actually deliver a September cut after data showed inflation ticking higher. Powell's words reset those odds. Powell is no stranger to pressure. For months, the Trump administration has been urging the Fed to slash rates to juice growth. Powell insists the central bank is independent, but the backdrop is hard to ignore. Tariffs, immigration limits, and fiscal shifts are reshaping the economic landscape. Our policy rate is now 100 basis points closer to neutral than it was a year ago. I have no idea what that means, Powell reminded his audience, signaling that the Fed has room to maneuver. At the same time, he stressed that monetary policy is not on a preset course, a hedge that means the September cut is not guaranteed. For households, the Fed's decisions are felt in ways far less abstract than bond yields or stock charts. July's Consumer Price Index, the government's monthly gauge on inflation, rose 0.2%, a milder reading than in June. Prices are up 2.7% over the past 12 months, with core inflation, excluding food and energy, still sticky at 3.1%. Those numbers are high enough to sting at the checkout line, but not so high as to prevent the Fed from cutting. According to the CME FedWatch tool, markets are now see about an 89% chance of a quarter-point cut next month. Here's how a rate cut could impact you. Mortgages. HELOCs and ARMs feel it first. If you hold a 30-year fixed mortgage, Fed cut won't change your payment overnight. Those rates respond more to long-term bond yields. But adjustable rate mortgages and home equity lines of credit are different. they move with the prime rate, meaning your payment could drop within a billing cycle or two. On a $250,000 balance, a half-point cut can free up hundreds of dollars over a year. For fixed-rate borrowers, the payoff comes if long-term yields fall, creating a refinancing window. Use the lull to polish credit scores and prep paperwork. Savers are currently enjoying the best yields in a generation, with some high-yield savings accounts paying 5% annual percentage APY yearly, or more. But those rates are fleeting. Banks typically trim deposit yields soon after the Fed cuts. Locking in today with a CD ladder or short-term treasury yields prices. The July CPI shows relief at the gas pump and on some grocery items, but shelter, healthcare, insurance, used cars, and airline fares continue to climb. The best strategy is timing. Buy big-ticket items like appliances during seasonal sales, negotiate leases before increases set in, and shop off-peak for travel. Make sure you don't have a heart attack during the hot season. Credit card APRs are tied to the prime rate, which follows the Fed's benchmark. In theory, a cut should bring relief. In practice, the effect is tiny. After the Fed's half-point cut in September of 2024, average APRs barely budged, dipping from 21.76% to 21.47%. That's not enough to make a dent in monthly bills. Real relief comes from strategies like moving balances to a 0% introductory card, consolidating with a personal loan, or shopping smaller banks that still offer competitive rates. In his final turn at Jackson Hole, Powell, whose term as board chair ends in May 2026, didn't swing for history with a grand gesture. Instead, he left a kind of manual. Stay nimble, stay honest, and remember who the Fed is really for. Price stability is essential for a sound and stable economy and supports the well-being of all Americans. For a leader accused of moving too carefully, Powell's farewell carried a quiet defiance. The future may be uncertain, but the mission endures. Monetary policy is not on a preset course. FOMC members will make these decisions based solely on their assessment of the data and its implications for the economic outlook and the balance of risks. We will never deviate from that approach. It was a quiet but firm reminder of what the Federal Reserve is and what it is not. Despite public pressure from the White House to cut rates, the Fed is not beholden to any president. Its North Star remains the same two objectives Congress gave it decades ago: maximum employment and stable prices. Every rate move, Powell stressed, will be judged against that dual mandate, not against politics. Alaska Medical Board approves draft to discipline providers of gender-affirming care for youth. Approves draft, like a draft of a document. The Alaska State Medical Board unanimously approved draft language classifying gender-affirming medical or surgical care for minors as unprofessional conduct. Review set for August 22nd. That's today. After lawmakers failed to act on a March request, the Alaska State Medical Board sent a letter urging limits on gender-affirming care for minors and moved to draft regulations led by Matt Hailala, Anchorage podiatrist and board member. The draft language expands unprofessional conduct to include puberty blockers and surgeries for minors, exempts congenital sex development disorder treatments, and will go to the State Department of Law before a 30-day public comment period. If adopted, practitioners may face sanctions, including license revocation, and medical students and physicians warned this could deter clinicians and harm Alaska's physician workforce and access to care. The board's move reflects a broader trend in other states where more than half have limited gender-affirming care, and the rulemaking process can take months, including further meetings and oral comments. The proposal would deem any professional who uses hormonal or surgical treatments for minors as being grossly negligent and subject to sanctions by the board, according to the board's minutes from a June meeting. The type and extent of disciplinary actions were not spelled out, and board member Matt Halala, an Anchorage podiatrist who is helping write the proposed regulations, declined to discuss the details Thursday with the Associated Press ahead of the meeting. Anchorage podiatrist joins all-Republican field in 2026 Alaska governor's race. Retired Anchorage podiatrist Matt Halala filed to join the 2026 Alaska governor's race Friday. This is from July. Halala, born in Anchorage and raised in the Kenai Peninsula, has never held elected office, but in an interview, the 55-year-old said his experience as a doctor and business owner make him well-suited for the top job in state government. The more I get to know candidates and other people that are in office, as much as I admire them, I think I have something unique to offer to help with a lot of the divisiveness without having to compromise on critical principles. He said he's especially adept at working with people with whom he disagrees, an approach he said would lend itself well to collaborating with lawmakers. When's the last time we had an overwhelming majority in our legislature in Alaska? He said. It's always kind of razor thin, back and forth, and you become stymied and dysfunctional when people aren't able to get through the contempt and recognize and align that with common goals. For decades, Halala has donated tens of thousands of dollars to Republican candidates, including Governor Mike Dunleavy, Congressman Nick Begich, and U.S. Senator Dan Sullivan, according to campaign finance data aggregator Open Secrets. Ooh. Open Secrets. It's a good site to keep, I think, maybe. Halala, though, cast himself as straddling political fault lines. For example, Halala said he'd like to expand school choice options like charter schools and homeschool, priorities that Republicans, including Dunleavy, have emphasized. But Halala also emphasized the state's obligation to ordinary neighborhood public schools. The government is obligated to defend the defenseless and care for those in need, he said, adding that he'd like to expand opportunities for businesses to create jobs. Like Alaska politicians on both sides of the political aisle, Halala says he'd like to expand resource development in the state. As the state faces a budget crunch, he said the state government has a spending problem. He said he'd like to make the state spending more transparent in an effort to build trust with the republic. That, he said, could help lawmakers find a compromise on annual permanent fund dividends the state can afford. You can't sustain $2 billion deficits every year. That just compounds problems. His most recent experience in government comes as Dunleavy appointee to the state medical board, which made headlines this spring when it asked the legislature to restrict gender-affirming care for minors. Lawmakers did not act on the request. However, this time, a month and a half, 2 months later, they are acting on it. Hilala joins a field of 6 Republicans running for governor in 2026 so far. No Democrats or independents have filed to join the race. Dunleavy cannot run for a third term. Deadline is June 1st, 2026. Deadline to file. Alaska population by party affiliation. Statewide. 590,000. D is Democrat, R is Republican. 78,000 Democrats and 142,000 Republicans. And 17,000 independents. It's 260,000 undecided? Undeclared. 80,000 nonpartisans. So mostly undeclared, second most Republican, third most nonpartisan, fourth Democrat. California Governor Gavin Newsom's national profile soars with latest Trump fight, but there are risks. Charlemagne the God stated that Gavin Newsom has been doing what Democrats want for a long time, indicating support for Newsom's actions in the political landscape. Ben Tulkin noted that Newsom is gaining national media exposure that portrays him as a leader showing strength. Boyd Brown criticized the actions of Newsom and Texas Governor Greg Abbott as a train wreck. Newsom's upcoming election win in November is seen as a potential boost for his national ambitions as he ties his campaign to a conflict with Trump. Trump says U.S. will impose tariffs on all foreign furniture. Trump announced that the U.S. will impose tariffs on all foreign furniture within 50 days after completing an investigation. Shares of major furniture retailers like Wayfair, RH, Restoration Hardware, and Williams-Sonoma fell after Trump's announcement. The U.S. imported about $25.5 billion in furniture in 2024, with around 60% coming from Vietnam and China. Think he's going to back down? Him and his buddies bought a bunch of Wayfair and Restoration Hardware stock right after saying this, right after it dropped, and then they're going to go back and those are going to go back up. Yeah. Yeah, because IKEA is 100% imported. Wow. Wayfair lost $6 a share. When did he announce that? Published 4 hours ago, 5 o'clock? Trump tariffs on furniture.
a major tariff investigation in the furniture industry, posting on social media a couple of minutes ago, I am pleased to announce that we are doing a major tariff investigation on furniture coming into the United States.
$4.20. So he tweeted this at 4:20 p.m. And look at that, immediately over the next 5 minutes. At 4:20 p.m., Wayfair was at $80. 4:25, it was at $72. Can 1 be divided into 3 equal parts? Yes. Not with my drawing skills. But also, one plus 1 plus 1 is 3 over 3 equals 1. Because you're thinking like 0.33333. Like that'll never equal exactly 1. It'll always be this. But 0.3 with infinite 3's plus 0.3 with infinite 3's plus 0.3 with infinite 3's is equal to 0.9 with infinite 9's. And through some math magic, that is equal to 1. If 1 is there, oh, this is not the right graph. What brought that question? You're welcome, non-math lady. Dropped from what? 79.49 to 72.50. Governor DeSantis defies judge's order to halt operations at Alligator Alcatraz. We're not going to be deterred. Governor Ron DeSantis announced that deportations will continue at Alligator Alcatraz despite a judge's order to halt operation and dismantle parts of the facility. U.S. District Judge Kathleen Williams issued a temporary injunction requiring the dismantling of parts of Alligator Alcatraz due to environmental risks. The lawsuit against Alligator Alcatraz was filed by Friends of the Everglades, the Center for Biological Diversity, and the Miccosukee Tribe, claiming violations of environmental regulations. DeSantis asserted that his administration would continue deportations, stating this is not going to deter us from their mission. I know, he's just completely ignoring the law. Yep, the party of law and order. This is a judge that was not going to give us a fair shake. Then appeal it. Don't just ignore it. This was preordained, very much an activist judge that is trying to do policy from the bench. In the face of a court order requiring the state to dismantle its touted and controversial Alligator Alcatraz Detention Center, Governor DeSantis said Florida remains committed to the mission of carrying out President Donald Trump's immigration enforcement efforts. State officials, led by the GOP governor, quickly rebuffed the Thursday night ruling from U.S. District Kathleen Williams, an Obama-era appointee. The ruling would make it impossible to operate Alligator Alcatraz by requiring the removal of fencing, lighting, and generators. Florida already appealed the decision Friday morning as the state prepares to open a second immigrant housing facility in a vacant prison outside Jacksonville. This is a judge that was not going to give us a fair shake. This was preordained. This is not going to deter us. The comments from DeSantis underscore how Florida is taking a hardline position against illegal immigration and hoping to lead on the state level in enforcing Trump's deportation push. State leaders have been vocal and public supporters of the country's revamped immigration policies, authorizing state agencies to sign 287 illegal immigration assistance agreements with U.S. Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. Florida this week dispatched Lieutenant Governor Jay Collins to California to ensure an immigrant from India who allegedly killed 3 people in a semi-truck crash was extradited back to the state. While some of Florida's moves, including the establishment of the Alligator Alcatraz facility in the Everglades, are being fought in court, DeSantis pledged the state will make sure to get the job done in the end. You have people that are in this country that have already been ordered to be removed by the current system, and yet the previous administration didn't want to do anything about it, except pass legislation. We're now in this position where we're leading the state efforts to help the Trump administration actually enforce the law and actually remove these illegal aliens, not just from Florida, but from our country. In Thursday's court order, Williams challenged the Alcatraz facility's operation on environmental grounds and ordered the state to stop construction at the facility and, within 60 days, remove fencing, lighting, and generators. This case is now slated to play out in the 11th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in Atlanta. The state, meanwhile, is gearing up to open a second migrant detention center in Baker County, west of Jacksonville, that is expected to hold some 1,300 people and eventually up to 2,000. We're not going to be deterred. We're totally in the right on this, DeSantis said Friday. But I would also note, because of the success of Alligator Alcatraz, there's demand for more. So it does say that he appealed it. All right, so it doesn't actually say that he's just going to ignore the ruling. It does say he's appealing it. So hopefully he's not just ignoring the ruling. Right. Like, he's pressing ahead with the agenda, despite the legal setback. But that just means pressing forward with an appeal and with building a new one. So that's good news. Oops. Yeah. Mail services halt U.S. deliveries amid tariff rate confusion. President Trump is ending the de minimis exemption that allowed high volumes of parcels to enter the U.S. duty-free, effective August 29th. Oh, no kidding. Suspending duty-free de minimis treatment for all countries. De minimis on high volume mail. I've already gotten a few notices from small businesses abroad that are going to be suspending mail to the U.S. Any overseas sales will be suspended in a few days for an indefinite amount of time until the U.S. figures out what its new system is going to be. What is it? For like bulk packages? Low value imports, de minimis, which is like the government won't bother with it because it's such a trifling amount. So now every single piece of mail or shipment, even if it's low value, will have to be checked. Removes the presidential executive order removes the exemption that previously allowed goods valued under $800 to enter the U.S. free of duties and formal customs entry procedures. Moving forward, nearly all such shipments will face full tariff treatment. That should explain it there, what that means. Goods valued under $800. I guess certain goods under $800, or most goods under $800, could enter the U.S. without paying tariffs. But now it can't. The de minimis treatment is suspended for all non-postal shipments, regardless of value, country of origin, or shipment method. International postal shipments, duties must be paid by the international mail carrier or by a CBP-certified qualified party acting in lieu of the carrier. Non-postal shipments. All shipments, even those valued under $800, must be now formally entered into ACE by an authorized filer. Retailers, marketplaces, and logistics providers that rely heavily on de minimis to deliver duty-free e-commerce goods to U.S. consumers will most be affected. Many currently ship under $800 orders directly from warehouses in China, Canada, or Mexico to U.S. buyers without paying duties. So I guess that's like Wish or that other one. With the exemption gone, businesses must prepare to file customs entries for every low-value import, reassess sourcing strategies that rely on de minimis arbitrage, educate international sellers and logistics partners on new obligations, update shipping platforms to calculate and collect applicable duties, reassess sourcing strategies that rely on de minimis arbitrage. That would be like if the tariffs on this little tchotchke good from China is 25%, but from Europe is only 10%, then maybe for the Chinese seller, it makes more sense to sell through Europe. That's interesting. De minimis arbitrage. The White House cited 4 national emergencies as the legal basis for the move. Drug trafficking from Canada and Mexico, especially fentanyl and precursors, synthetic opioid supply chains from China and Hong Kong, systematic abuse of de minimis to evade tariffs, particularly through fraudulent shipping and mislabeling, large and persistent U.S. trade deficits driven in part by duty-free, low-value imports. The administration has now received confirmation from the Secretary of Commerce that the U.S. systems are equipped to collect duties effectively on a global basis, even for high-volume, low-value shipments. Huh. Tariff tracker. That's interesting. Kilmar Abrego Garcia released from criminal custody in Tennessee. On Friday, Kilmar Abrego Garcia was released from Putnam County Jail, Tennessee, and is en route to reunite with his family in Maryland while awaiting trial on federal human smuggling charges. U.S. District Judge Paula Zinis ordered Kilmar Abrego Garcia's release on Friday, barring immediate deportation without at least 72 hours notice and restoring prior supervision conditions. Attorneys from Hecker Fink filed a motion earlier this week alleging vindictive prosecution after the April 10th ruling, citing Abrego Garcia's unlawful deportation to El Salvador and mistreatment, while judges questioned MS-13 claims. After being released Friday, Abrego Garcia has 48 hours to return to Maryland before reporting for pretrial supervision, and ICE officials said they will seek to detain and remove him. So they're going to arrest him again. He is scheduled to stand trial on Tennessee human smuggling charges in January, with defense lawyers alleging government retaliation and the Justice Department accusing him of a multi-state smuggling operation. Okay. Federalist number 11. Oops. I think the title of the stream is wrong. Oh, maybe not. Oh, nope, it's not. I might have to split this one in two. Finish it tomorrow night. The utility of the Union in respect to commercial relations and a navy. Something I learned yesterday was that the Federalist Papers and also the Anti-Federalist Papers were the series of essays that were actually kind of feuding back and forth. So the founding fathers who supported the Constitution and were the Federalists, and the fathers who were opposed to it or they had concerns about it were the Anti-Federalists. And they basically like battle rapped back and forth in a series of really wordy essays. And those are the Federalist and the Anti-Federalist Papers. And I did not know that. It was a back and forth. They were having like a dialogue in public. They were literally debating on stream. So we might read the Anti-Federalist Papers too, but we gotta get through these first. To the people of the state of New York. The importance of the Union, in a commercial light, is one of those points about which there is least room to entertain a difference of opinion, and which has, in fact, commanded the most general assent of men who have any acquaintance with the subject. "18th century debate bros, hell yeah." In the context of Federalist Papers number 11, the word assent refers to general agreement or approval. That makes sense. The assent. They assented. This applies as well to our intercourse with foreign countries as with each other. There are appearances to authorize a supposition that the adventurous spirit which distinguishes the commercial character of America has already excited uneasy sensations in several of the maritime powers of Europe. They seem to be apprehensive of our too great interference in that carrying trade, which is the support of their navigation and the foundation of their naval strength. Those of them which have colonies in America look forward to what this country is capable of becoming with a painful solicitude. They foresee the dangers that may threaten their American dominions from the neighborhood of states, which have all the dispositions and would possess all the means requisite to the creation of a powerful marine, The impressions of this kind will naturally indicate the policy of fostering divisions among us and of depriving us, as far as possible, of an active commerce in our own bottoms. This would answer the threefold purpose of preventing our interference in their navigation, of monopolizing the profits of our trade, and of clipping the wings by which we might soar to a dangerous greatness. Did not prudence forbid the detail, it would not be difficult to trace by facts the workings of this policy to the cabinets of ministers. If we continue united, we may counteract a policy so unfriendly to our prosperity in a variety of ways. If we continue united, we may counteract a policy so unfriendly to our prosperity in a variety of ways. By prohibitory regulations, extending at the same time throughout the states, we may oblige foreign countries to bid against each other for the privileges of our markets, which is exactly what we did. This assertion will not appear chimerical to those who are able to appreciate the importance of the markets of 3 millions of people, increasing in rapid progression, for the most part exclusively addicted to agriculture and likely from local circumstances to remain so to any manufacturing nation, and the immense difference there would be to the trade and navigation of such a nation, between a direct communication in its own ships and an indirect conveyance of its products and returns to and from America in the ships of another country. Suppose, for instance, we had a government in America capable of excluding Great Britain, with whom we have at present no treaty of commerce, from all our ports. What would be the probable operation of this step upon her politics? Would it not enable us to negotiate with the fairest prospect of success for commercial privileges of the most valuable and extensive kind in the dominions of that kingdom, the most valuable and extensive kind in the dominions of that kingdom? When these questions have been asked upon other occasions, they have received a plausible but not a solid nor satisfactory answer. It has been said that prohibitions on our part would produce no change in the system of Britain, because she could prosecute her trade with us through the medium of the Dutch, who would be her immediate customers and paymasters for all those articles which were wanted for the supply of our markets. But would not her navigation be materially injured by the loss of the important advantage of being her own carrier in that trade? Would not the principal part of its profits be intercepted by the Dutch as a compensation for their agency and risk? Would not the mere circumstance of freight occasion a considerable deduction? Would not so circuitous an intercourse facilitate the competitions of other nations by enhancing the price of British commodities in our markets, and by transferring to other hands the management of this interesting branch of the British commerce? A mature consideration of the objects suggested by these questions will justify a belief that the real disadvantages to Britain from such a state of things, conspiring with the prepossessions of a great part of the nation in favor of the American trade, and with the importunities of the West India Islands, would produce a relaxation in her present system, and would let us into the enjoyment of privileges in the markets of those islands elsewhere, from which our trade would derive the most substantial benefits. Such a point gained from the British government, and which would not be expected without an equivalent in exemptions and immunities in our markets, would be likely to have a correspondent effect on the conduct of other nations, who would not be inclined to see themselves altogether supplanted in our trade. That whole paragraph is 2 sentences. Yeah, I can't finish this tonight. I gotta finish this tomorrow. My eyes are drying out. My throat hurts. Okay. Good night, chat. Thanks for joining.